I'm pleased now to introduce our next speaker, Kellie-Lynn Pirie. Kellie-Lynn Pirie, formerly known as Kenneth Anderson, is a detransitioner and the founder of Detrans Alliance Canada. Kellie-Lynn is from BC, though she spent some time growing up in the USA. In 2002, she encountered transgender ideology and began to medically transition in 2004. In 2010, she became disenchanted with transgender ideology and began a gradual journey towards detransition. Kellie-Lynn is going to describe and share her journey. Please welcome Kellie-Lynn.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Hard, get closer? Okay. I'm Kellie-Lynn Pirie, and I'm a detransitioner and a Christian. I was born a girl. I want to open with a response to the trans queer rhetoric about parental abuse and neglect with some examples from my childhood. But what I first want to define is what parental abuse is not. Parental abuse is not parents telling their son he can be a boy however he wants to be a boy, and that as a boy he is a male and will grow up to become a man. It is not parental neglect for parents to teach their daughter that puberty is a natural stage of life, to reassure and support her through all the awkward, uncomfortable, inconvenient physical and emotional changes that accompany becoming a sexually mature adult human being. I will contrast these examples with parental abuse and neglect that occurred during my childhood and go through a bit of my youth. In 1969, as a single mother with 6 children under the age of 18, my mom chose to marry a convicted pedophile. That poor parenting decision was a gross abuse of her parental duties to care for the physical and emotional well-being of her children. Multiple times during her 11-year marriage to that man, she knowingly chose to leave her children alone in his care. That was child neglect. She completely neglected her duties as our primary caregiver and sole parental custodian. Okay? So pronouns are not abusive. You know, like child neglect and child abuse are really real things, and they happen to kids. She got a lot of things right as a mother, and everything she got right is the reason I am here today. As a mom, she was amazing with infants right up to the age of about 4. She was completely tuned into their emotional landscape and excelled at meeting their needs for structure and emotional consistency. When I worked in Vancouver's downtown east side, I witnessed the struggles of adults who had never had that. During my years in trans delusion, I worked providing harm reduction services to individuals living with mental health, addiction, and homelessness. Those who never had the consistency of stable parental love and attachments were fundamentally broken by that lack of care and consistency. Under the blind affirmation model, an individual's childhood, family of origin, and significant life events are not explored. Instead, my experience was that only my present level of functioning was observed. And given that I was a psychology major and a certified counselor, I excelled at presenting very well, at appearing to possess a great depth of emotional health and wellness. Events during a childhood being raised by a pedophile affected my level of comfort with being a beautiful woman in ways that are no longer readily apparent. When Mom married Gene in 1969, I was less than 3 years old. Everything in his world revolved around gaining access to children. His friends, associates, and clients all shared his perversions. From the age of 4 to 8, he would take me to gatherings with the intent of observing and sharing children. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I'll stay at the surface. I just want people to be reassured of that. As a blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl, I learned that being female was unsafe. For whatever reason, the adults chose to protect their sons in these events. So I didn't witness that sons or boys being shared and abused the same way I witnessed other girls. So the lessons I took away from this experience was that boys were protected and safe, while girls were exploited and exposed. No longer being a virgin, from the ages of 8 to 11, Gene began to indulge his voyeuristic tendencies. He set up a camper on our back acreage and would entice neighborhood boys with drugs and alcohol to have sex with me while he watched. Prior to bringing the boys out, Gene would have me smoke marijuana laced with ketamine. As a result, I would experience complete bodily dissociation and numbness during these events. So once again, I got a message that it was safer to be a boy than a girl. Gene's best friend and the father of the only girls my age that lived in the rural area we were at was also a pedophile. Both these men enjoyed watching children engage in sexual acts. While none of us girls were sexually attracted to females or comfortable being touched while naked at that point in our lives, we did what we did to avoid the beatings. For whatever reason, Gene never gave me drugs when he had me with a female. So these two opposing experiences were paralleled in my young mind, that I didn't see boys being beaten on, and I saw my female friends being beaten on, and I experienced those beatings myself. So I really developed this idea that being a boy was safer and was better. I understood that I was a girl. Look, children are amazing recorders of events and extremely poor interpreters. I took the lie away from these events that boys are safe, where girls aren't. I always knew that I was a girl, and at a younger age, like prior to puberty, I was comfortable being in a girl body. The lie I developed was that I would have been safe from the abuse and the exploitation if I had been born a boy, because that was what I observed. At 12 years old, I had a pregnancy scare. There was no doctor visits, no confirmation tests done. How the matter was terminated is buried in a haze of drugs and alcohol. Afterwards, my mother's husband developed an absolute obsession that he could use me to have unlimited access to babies. So I developed a plan to figure out a way to turn him into the police. When I was 13 years old, he caught me attempting to tape him. And he absolutely lost it. He began screaming obscenities. He realized that he had lost control of me. And he had already been in jail several times by that age for what he had done to kids. I remember him wrapping his hands around my throat, and I thought for sure he was killing me. I was dressed downstairs in our living room, and I had a social worker sitting on one side of me and a police officer on the other. And as I grew and matured, these events impacted my level of comfort with being a beautiful woman. From the age of 13 to 35, I turned to drugs and alcohol to numb my feelings of discomfort and to ease my social awkwardness. In 2002, I sobered up, and I've been sober since May of 2002. what happened was that all of my discomforts that I was able to cover up with the drugs and the alcohol came screaming forward into my head. And I was living in Trans Vancouver at the time, so I received this message that the reason I was awkward and uncomfortable living in women's support recovery was because I was really a guy. And I was desperate for an instant fix, and it seemed that, because there's always a short-term goal, especially when you're in the early stages of transitioning. You got to get your, at that time it was like get a carry letter, get an appointment to a doctor. So I got assessed, I got onto testosterone. Testosterone seemed like a miracle drug when I was first on it because it dried up the tears. And I was crying so much. And at the same time I was transitioning, people were responding to my decision to transition. So it just felt like forward was the only direction to go. When I did express doubt with the process, it's like that's internalized transphobia. I would love to hear the differential diagnosis between internalized transphobia and the first signs of desistance or regret. I would really like to hear a professional put that forward. After starting testosterone in 2006, I had a hysterectomy. 2008, I had a bilateral mastectomy. I was early on the line of regret in that it was about 2 years later that I realized that these were external applications to an internal problem. I expressed to a woman who had met me 4 years into my journey, so I looked like a man, that I was interested in dating her, and she's like, "But you're a guy." And I was like, oh. I realized I had become completely invisible to the individuals I was at that point sexually attracted to. I fled Vancouver and went long-haul trucking. I didn't expect to heal. I didn't expect to find a solution to my problem. I just, I couldn't face the things I'd done. I had been deeply involved in trans advocacy from 2004 to 2010. I was involved in the first stages of getting phalloplasty funded for females, to which I am deeply ashamed, because that surgery is just a train wreck. It was 2019, I was talking with Aaron Kimberly one day over coffee, and we were talking about the insanity of this idea that children could be transitioned, because we were both talking about how we left the scene in Vancouver at about the same time, 2010, 2011, and we were celebrating the fact that kids, primarily boys born with DSDs, which was then differences in sexual development, would no longer be forcibly transitioned to be females in any first world nation in the country, or on the globe. And somehow we got from there to everyone's normal, healthy kids who are just a little different are being funneled into this, let's transition them, funnel without any sort of assessment process. It was just a blind affirmation model. So Aaron formed Gender Dysphoria Alliance Canada, which later became the Gender Dysphoria Alliance International. And in 2023, as I entered into really going, I regret transitioning. I don't know if I can ever get back to being a female from where I was, because I had a beard down here, because I still have the fear, I still have the discomfort. What I have now is I have the knowledge that I am a woman. I was born a girl and I am a woman, because it's this, for me, it's the absolute insanity of putting a man in a woman's prison. That was my moment of going, I can't be associated with this movement, and really understanding the depths to which I had been deceived. They present transitioning as if it is going to solve, as if rearranging the skin on my body is going to solve my internal discomfort. And it doesn't. Working as a long-haul trucker, I really began to understand the difference between men and women, the difference between the types of things that motivate men to make the sacrifices they make. And I also want to address just be kind. When I was about 6 years old, 7 years old, the age at which children begin to be considered credible witnesses in the United States is 8 years old. So at about 6, 7, Gene and his friends began to tell me how cruel it would be for me to talk to the police about the things that they did. So when people confront me with just be kind, that's the example I give. Sometimes, if the truth is perceived by the person who is going to have to face the consequences of their actions as cruel, I will do the cruel thing, because that's the right thing to do. If you know any detransitioners who are interested in suing WPATH, there are those who are attempting to organize here in Canada, especially individuals like me who transitioned as adults. We're leaving the path to suing gender clinics that are located in Canada to individuals who were transitioned during childhood. But we are, as adults, looking at addressing WPATH for breach of trust. So you can have those people reach out to Our Duty Canada, and they can help connect the people together. And I've started an initiative, we're calling it Referendum 2024, but it is to protect the status, the legal category of female. I don't know if people are aware, in British Columbia and in several provinces across Canada, the vital statistics departments are now, quote, the category of gender will be captured on the birth certificate under the category of sex. So they are beginning to attempt to conflate those two distinct categories. So we're asking that they, in whatever manner they choose to do so, that the category of gender identity and the category of sex be captured as two distinct categories. Thank you very much for listening.
Wow.